matter.
Thanks very much, Deputy Speaker. It is true that small businesses are incredibly important for Australia. In fact, small businesses make up 98% of all businesses in Australia. They make up more than 60% of all employment in Australia, and they make up more than half of all GDP in Australia. This is a sector which unquestionably powers the Australian economy, accounts for many of the livelihoods of the people in my electorate and electorates right around Australia. So it is incredibly important that we have coherent and positive policies to support the small business sector. Now, that starts with understanding the small business sector, Deputy Speaker. And unfortunately, what we have from the other side is a series of policies which are a world away and completely irrelevant to the daily challenges that small businesses face. The member for Casey had the temerity to refer to the back to basics policy of the Shadow Treasurer, Deputy Speaker. Back to basics, it's an interesting term for an economic policy. I don't know if the Shadow Treasurer is fully up to speed with what basic means in the slang amongst young people, but he's certainly hit the nail on the head if he does, because it's a policy that has almost no substance, a policy that has almost no relevance to small businesses. It's full of high-minded, philosophical concepts like fiscal policy and debt and inflation and productivity, but nothing of the nuts and bolts of actually running a small business. Nothing of the practicality of going in, day out, opening up the shop, employing the workers, serving the customers, closing the door and keeping those doors open. These are the realities of small business for Australians. These are the issues that they want support with, these nuts and bolts issues, and the idea of some complex, back-to-basics, high-level analysis of the macroeconomy does not speak to their experience. Remember Casey came in here and in his speech about small business, the big issue that he wanted to address, Deputy Speaker, was quantum computing. The issue on the mind of every Australian small business, whether it be a cafe or a pub, they're all interested in quantum computing. You don't hear anything but quantum computing when you go and talk to small businesses. When you go to the shops and the pubs and the hairdressers, it's on the tip of their tongue, quantum computing. He went on and on about PsiQuantum and the proposal for a tender, which he has some beef with from an article that he'd read in the newspaper this morning. The truth is, this has absolutely nothing to do with the daily realities of small businesses. I'm going to take a lot of interjections from the member. I don't really know what you're saying, but I can hear you mumbling over there. What was it, sorry? Can you get a ute for 20 grand? Is that your question? That's right. It's a great question, it's a great question, Deputy Speaker. It's a great question. I mean, the instant asset write-off, the one policy that was referred to by those opposite, the instant asset write-off, that's actually a Labor policy, a policy introduced by Labor in 2008, has been copied and perpetuated by the opposition. So their ideas so far are back to basics on fiscal policy, snore from the small business sector, some bizarre obsession with quantum computing, totally irrelevant to the small business sector, and a policy that Labor began and has been perpetuated by the Coalition. Terrific support there for small business from the Coalition. Deputy Speaker, they're $1 short and a day late when it comes to actually understanding and helping small businesses and the realities they face every day. Let me tell you a little bit about the challenges that small businesses really face, that they're really struggling with. They're struggling with the regulatory burden of hiring new workers. It is true, Deputy Speaker, that the hardest worker to hire for any business is the first worker. Going from having no workers in your business, a start-up just run by you, to employing that first worker is an enormous challenge and a big hurdle for many small businesses. And the research suggests that it can take more than 20 hours just to set up the basic administration of paying, providing superannuation, meeting OH&S requirements, record-keeping obligations, tax, superannuation and payment. The truth is that most small businesses, when they start out, they do not have the systems in order to make those early employment decisions and to employ people in a way that is efficient and simple for them. Most of those businesses have an enormous regulatory and compliance burden when it comes to hiring that first worker, whether it be their legal status, whether it be their contract, their pay-as-you-go withholding, understanding the award rules. These are real challenges that businesses face when they go to hire their first employee. It is a big impediment for small businesses in Australia when they begin to take that step forward towards growth, when they start to open up the doors, grow their business and take on their first workers. And for a small business, the compliance cost of making those early employment decisions can be 5 times higher than for larger businesses. That's a big burden, Deputy Speaker. That's a real burden that small businesses face and a real restraint on employment in this country because small businesses employ 2/3 of all Australians. That's a real issue that small businesses are grappling with. Another issue that small businesses grapple with is red tape. Small business people are busy serving their customers, running their business, managing their workforce, controlling their cash flow, and on top of that, they have a significant compliance burden from government. A recent study found that excess red tape was costing Australian businesses $9.3 billion every year. That's just small businesses. And more than 2/3 of this compliance cost was tax compliance. That's $6.2 billion for small businesses just on tax compliance activities. And that cost per business is more than 200 times larger than for large businesses in Australia. More than 200 times larger. Even though that small business has a much smaller workforce, a much smaller P&L, they still have to do many of the same things that the big businesses have to do, albeit with much restricted financial capacity. So the regulatory burden that we place on small businesses is something that we must be deeply conscious of. It is a real issue that keeps small business owners away from their customers, keeps them away from their business, keeps them away, in many cases, from their families, because that's where that time comes from. It comes from the time at the end of the day, early in the morning, when they should be going home, living their lives. The doors of the shop are closed, the business is finished for the day, but they have to start their compliance activities for government. This is another real challenge, and again, a challenge that the opposition has presented no solutions for. Of course, the biggest problem that every small business faces is just the daily grind of cash flow. Just knowing that money is going to come through the door so that they can pay their workers, keep the lights on, pay their bills. That's the stress that every small business in my electorate lives with every single day. And a recent study found that one of the biggest issues that small businesses face in terms of cash flow is late payments from larger businesses. And this has a massive impact on small businesses. They have to wait all the services they provide to larger businesses. They end up waiting 30 days, in some cases 60 days, in some cases 90 days for the money to come in. And a recent study found that 60% of small business owners across Australia had experienced cash flow problems last year. And in order to get through a period of poor cash flow, 27% of small business owners had resorted to using their personal savings for their business. They'd gone and dipped into their own savings, extended the mortgage on their home, borrowed from family and friends. 1/3 of small business owners are doing that because of the cash flow challenges they face today. And as I said before, one of the biggest issues, and one issue that we can be addressing in this parliament, is late payment and trade credit terms from large businesses. A recent study from Xero found $216 billion paid by large firms to small firms was late. $200 billion of money owed to small businesses that is not being paid to them on time. That is creating a cash flow crunch for those businesses. And half of that money was late. Half of that money was due to the small businesses under the contractual terms provided by the big businesses and was late. That's $115 billion in late payments. meaning that small businesses are losing about $7 billion in working capital every single year. And in 2023, the situation hasn't improved. Xero's report, Money Matters, indicates that 24% of small businesses find themselves spending time chasing overdue payments, having to call up the big businesses, recognising a huge imbalance of power between that small business and the big business, begging those big businesses merely to pay the money that they owe on time. This is the crunch that small business families face every single day, worrying about getting that money in just so they can pay it out to the workers and the bills that are rolling through the door. There are lots of opportunities, Deputy Speaker, for us to support small businesses, and this bill contains a lot of them. One of those opportunities is supporting small businesses with digital capability. And this really is a revolution in the way that small business works. A revolution in the way that small business works. And as we get into the detail, I note, of course, that the interjections have wound down because I think we've exhausted the knowledge of the member opposite. But I'm still going to go through some of this detail because I think it is important. Oh, here we go. I've provoked you. Terrific. Terrific. I've provoked you. Good to see you wake up. And the key opportunity here for small businesses, the key opportunity is the digital economy. It used to be the case that IT systems that supported business were only available to large businesses. They required big mainframes, large IT investment, big network investment, and those were simply out of reach of most small businesses. But today, with the benefit of cloud computing and the benefit of a range of new apps, suddenly a lot of those technologies are available to small businesses. Technologies that enable small businesses to engage in online marketing, to do e-invoicing, to run their accounting in the cloud, to manage suppliers, HR in the cloud. All of these means that digital technologies which were once not available to small businesses now are available and can help them with all of the tasks they have to do in the management of their business. And that's why this bill is so important. This bill provides a lot of support for small businesses. It provides incentives to help small businesses save on their energy bills. And under this proposal, small business with an aggregated turnover of less than $50 million per year will be able to claim an additional 20% tax deduction for eligible assets that enhance electrification and energy efficiency. Real support for cash flow for businesses when they're trying to do the right thing. They're trying to support the energy transition, they're trying to reduce their own energy bills, and this bill gives them the help they need to get over the upfront hurdle of that cost. I couldn't think of something right now at a time when energy bills are so high more valuable to be supporting Australian businesses with. Those businesses that are struggling with their cash flow, struggling to make ends meet in a difficult environment. This is the kind of initiative that will help restaurants and manufacturers and tradies and hairdressers. It will enable up to 3.8 million small businesses to share in the energy transition that is now underway. Of course, there are many more challenges that small businesses face, many more challenges. They do face challenges of keeping the cash flow coming in. They do face challenges of red tape. They do face challenges of hiring and managing workers, particularly that first worker, which in many cases can be so burdensome to control the compliance of. And this bill doesn't address all of those challenges, but it contains a series of important and concrete steps to take us forward. Concrete steps that are no more important at any time than they are today. At a time when small businesses are struggling with so many of the elements of a difficult and complex financial and economic environment. And that's why I commend this bill to the House.